Alright, it is Sunday, March 20th, and I'm hoping that spring has arrived early and for good. It's kind of bounced back and forth, but today is nice. Yesterday, not so nice. Now, we got the 64 Fairlane out. We got the transmission out of it, and I'm going to check it out. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but the reason I got it out is we got to go back to a few years ago. If you remember, when I freshened up the engine, this car had a 4800 stall converter made by A-1 converters. Been in this car, it's been a very good converter since year 2000 when I originally put a big block in this car. And it got sent back once over all that time to get freshened up, and nothing was wrong with it, and it was still working good. But when I went to put the car together, when I freshened up the engine 2 or 3 years ago, I dropped it and messed up the hub. So instead of sending it off to A1 and getting it fixed and waiting for it to get sent back, I went ahead and ordered a PTC converter, 8-inch 4800 stall. And after I got the car all back together, it seemed to run about what it should. I remember it going in the 40s in decent weather and slowing down to the 50s in hot weather. But if you remember, after this car sat all this time, I ran into all kinds of troubles with it being inconsistent. And if you remember last year, we finally figured out why the brakes were not releasing. Now they are. That was my inconsistency problem. I also had fuel pressure issues. Fuel pressure was bouncing up and down going down the track. Actually, under full throttle, it was going down to 4 pounds. Well, we fixed all that. If you remember, I replumbed all the fuel system, basically replaced it all. New pump, replumbed it with PTFE line, 10AN all the way up. Then I had to go with some 10AN all the way back for the return, and we fixed all that. Car was consistent after all that, but it had slowed down. There's a 658 on the window. That was in October. Pretty nice day. Not perfect conditions, but it should have been in the 40s. And it was consistent. And I noticed going down the track, engine sounded like it was really, really screaming, but it didn't feel like it was going nowhere. I'm thinking this PTC converter, for some reason, either the fins are locking up or something else is going wrong and it wasn't fully locking up. Because everything else should be fine on this car. I mean, if I'd have made some changes and then it slowed down, I would not be blaming the converter. But as it sat, the car used to run 40s. Now, we got the transmission out. Like I said, I'm going to look into it. If it needs anything, I'll do it. I don't think it's going to. And hopefully, all I'm going to need is a new pan gasket and a new pump gasket to put it all back together. So, if that's all it needs, that means I can get everything I need here in town. If that place I used to get stuff here in town is still open, I think they are. But anyway, we got our A1 converter. We sent it off, had it fixed, got it back. I also ordered a brand new Hughes converter. Now I'm going to try that one. Now the Hughes is a little bit more expensive than the other guys. And we tried to go with a little more stall. I told them 5200. I can shift this thing comfortably at 62 to 65. I kind of like to keep it at 6 since it is a big block. And there's a lot of passes on those rides. But we'll see how it does. I may not have to shift it as high as they think I should. And so we're going to try that out. If for some reason it don't do, if I don't feel like it's doing what it should do, we'll put our old A1 in there and make sure everything is okay. So I'm going to tear this transmission down and I'll show you what I find. Alright, it's all torn apart. Now I did see some clutch dust. I mean, now this looks, I know this looks dirty, but that's a cast pan, so that's why it looks like there's a lot of sludge, but there isn't. There is a little bit of clutch dust, and by looking at my clutches though, and my steels, that doesn't mean that it wasn't coming from the converter. That was not clutch dust, but whatever the sludge is. It's not a lot, so probably normal for something that's been together for over a year or so and raced. But If you look at my clutches and my steels, there's no sign of any slippage. These are the ones that go in the case. And as you can see where the clutches are contacting the steels, there are no hot spots whatsoever. They look great. And these right here, this is the forward clutch drum, which is the first and second. And those look great. There are no hot spots whatsoever. You can still see where I sanded a crisscross pattern on my steels. So those, all of them look like that too. I've already gone through them all. They all look really, really good. And here is the reverse high, which if I ever had any kind of wear in this transmission, it would be these, the high gear. But I'd solved that problem a long time ago by running a little bit more stock clearance. I got a little scratch mark there. Something was in there. But yes, they look good. You can still see my sanding marks. So this transmission, all it needs is a gasket set, and I'm going to throw it back together like it was. There's no need to buy clutches because they're brand new. They're practically new. And if you remember when I rebuilt that engine and this transmission, I may have a full season and a quarter or a half on it, so no need for that. Now here is the Hughes converter. I need to clean off my mill, which means I'm going to do a cold start on the Torino. I haven't done a follow-up video since I got it running, so we'll do a cold start, pull it out of the way, clean off my mill so I got a good flat table. I want to set my PTC converter beside it and make sure all the dimensions match up before I even attempt to fill it with fluid. So let's do that. Okay, you can really hear it when it's cold. There's still an exhaust leak on this side. That header needs some more work. I do know this gasket is leaking right here. I can feel it. But they'll get it down the road. I haven't even gotten to do a driving video on it yet. But as you can see, even with different heads of the cam, this engine hose starts exactly like it always did. You had to pump it, you got to pump it like 8 times, which I don't have. It's got a choke, but it's not hooked to a cable, so that's without the choke, using the choke. If I would have put a choke cable on it, it'd probably start a lot easier. I mean, it's a chilly morning. It's like in the 50s, but we're going to have to hook a choke cable up to it, make it a little easier to start. But I've only driven it once, and I didn't video it. But this thing's going to run pretty good. I only stabbed it once from a roll. But when I get time, we'll mess with it a little more. But at least now I can start it up and get it out of the garage. Okay, so here's the new Hughes converter sitting next to the PTC converter, which I know fits. We're sitting on the same distance here and here. Now, this hub looks a lot shorter than that, but if you go from here to here, that is about the same. But one thing I am concerned about is the length here. Can it go deep enough? Maybe it doesn't have to be as deep as that one is. We will see. I'm going to stick both of them in the pump and see how that works out. I should be able to stick this all the way in a pump, line this up with the flats on the pump gears, and still have some clearance between this and the pump, even when it's completely bottomed out. So we'll see. And I need to measure the pilot hub. They seem to question the size of the diameter I gave them, which I know is right. So let's compare that next. Okay, it looks like the diameter of my pilot is correct. 1 inch 375, and of course you already know that one's 1 inch 375. So we got that, and let's see, I'm going to check something else. Okay, here's the thing that concerned me about that different diameter snout, but to be sure whether that's going to work or not, I need to have the transmission together and probably put it in the car. Right now, the pump is in as far as it will go, and because of that flat spot right there, compared to my PTC converter, which is concaved here, I mean, it's not that much of a difference. It looks like a lot when you compare them, but it's not that much. We're talking 1/4 inch, if that. But right now, when you put that all the way in there, it does rub the seal. But whenever you put the converter in as deep as it'll go, and then you go to bolt the transmission up to the engine, you're supposed to have some clearance between here and the flywheel. And when you draw your bolts down, it's going to pull it away. Now, I won't really know for sure until I get the transmission together and I see how much difference there is between the two converters. So hopefully it's going to work out. I don't want to have to send this converter back to them without even getting to try it out first, because sometimes they got to rework the insides too. But we'll see. Like I said, I got to get the transmission back together before I know for sure. So everything but that is the same. And I want to make sure that these holes line up with my flywheel. My snub goes into the back of the crank. And I can't really compare anything else until the transmission is together. Okay, it looks like we got a problem with our Hughes converter. I don't know if you can see a scratch mark right there. This is hitting our bolts before we can bring these little plates flush on the flywheel. Now, maybe the guy could put spacers in there and it'll be alright, but I'm going to call him and ask first. And thankfully I do have my old converter from A-1 back, so if I have to send it back to him, I can at least stick that in there and get this thing going and ready for hopefully the first race, or at least sometime in April. But you can see how, you know, we probably got about 3/16 of play there. And Honestly, a guy might be able to put a 1/4 inch shim in there. I don't know if it'll make it go too far back. I would have to get the transmission up in there and see. But I'm going to call them and ask them before I even attempt that. And just see what they say. If they say send it back, we'll correct it. We'll just do that. So actually, it's about 3/16 away, and you need a little more clearance than that. So I'm going to tell them a 1/4 inch. I think it's how much. I'll probably need to make some spacers so I can tell them exactly how much to change it if they do that. Honestly, it's not supposed to be raised here. All my others are concaved, and that's why it's doing that. So we got to deal with that. Okay, it's a week later, and I got a hold of a Hughes converter. Got my flywheel off, and what they told me was you got to run low profile ARP flywheel bolts with their converter, which actually they didn't say that in so many words, and I'll get to that later. But here are my stock flywheel bolts with the big heads, and they hit. As you can see, they hit. When you got all of them in there, it looks even worse. And if I can take, now these are not the bolts I'm going to use. Right here, as you can see, actually these are almost as thick, but the head is not quite so big. And grab another one here, and if you stick these in the flywheel, grab a hold of these like this, kind of clumsy, and it goes down on it. So I ordered some ARP flywheel bolts, and of course the length I need is on back order. You can order 1 inch long all day long and ship tomorrow, but I need some that are a little bit over 5/8 in length, because the 1 inch long ones would hit the block. I really thought seriously about ordering the 1 inch ones and cutting them down, but I hate to spend money on something I got to alter, and so I ordered them. And of course they are on back order like everything else is, and we all know why everything's on back order. Wait till that happens to your food. Wake up, people. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and put my stock flywheel bolts back on it, and I'm going to use my A-1 converter, which is freshened up and ready to go. This is the PTC. This is the one that I'm suspecting the fins are flattening out. If the car picks back up to what it should with the A1, I'll be sending that back and telling them what's going on. But about my phone call with Hughes converters. Now, maybe this will be, once it's all said and done, maybe I will like this converter more than any. We'll see. But about the phone call, they didn't just tell me you need ARP flywheel bolts with a low profile head. He was very snarky about it. Pretty much, he made a comment about everybody on the planet uses those, and I kind of let him know I wasn't going to put up with that. I'm not going to give you the whole conversation, but that is no way to be. Now, if everyone on the planet has low profile flywheel bolts, why does this converter have clearance for stock ones and this one have clearance for stock ones? Maybe Hughes is the only converter company on the planet that you have to use low profile flywheel bolts. Now, he acted like it was just ridiculous that I was using stock flywheel bolts on a race application. Well, let me tell you something. These flywheel bolts have been in this car on 2 different motors since year 2001. I've never ever broken flywheel bolts. Maybe I should have run them. Maybe I was lucky. But I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person on the planet who runs stock flywheel boats on a car that runs anywhere from 630s to 650s. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, I don't know when I'm going to try this Hughes converter. I don't want to wait too long. But then again, if it doesn't work like it should, I am not confident that they're going to back it up just because of the way that guy acted. It might be just that one guy. We'll see. But the plan is I'm going to put the A-1 converter back in. And the last time I used it, before I dropped it and damaged it when I was rebuilding the engine, the car ran about what it should at this weight. Low 640s in good weather, 650s in hot weather, whereas this PTC slowed down to 660s, high 50s, and a low 660 in pretty decent weather. So something was going wrong. Hopefully it was the converter and nothing else. I can't imagine what else it could be. We've checked out the transmission, and engine seems fine, so we'll find out. But anyway, that's where we're at. I'm going to put that in here, and I'll let you know how all that works out. And thanks for watching. There you go. Yeah, that's what I say. Just a crazy puppy. You just a crazy puppy. Crazy, crazy puppy. Crazy puppy. Talk to me some more. You need your big old claws trimmed. She's a good girl.